The journey to 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Welcome to that first step. My name is Vincent. I've been a realtor for 3 years now, and I've had the pleasure of helping many buyers, most of them being first-time buyers, purchase their dream home. And I'm hoping to do the exact same thing for you, as I'm sure that's why you clicked on this video here today. And essentially what I'll be doing is I'm going to go over the entire buyer process and help answer the many common questions you'll have as a first-time buyer, specifically for a condo unit. So first, what does our current market look like? So we've had 7 consecutive interest rate cuts and most recently an interest rate hold, which shows a lot of stability in our market. And with these interest rate cuts, affordability has been the best it's been in the last couple of years. Now, how the interest rate and price relationship works, they work in an inverse relationship. So when interest rates come up, prices come down. And when interest rates come down, prices generally come up. Now, the reason why we haven't seen prices come up with these recent interest rate cuts is because there's usually a 3 to 6 month lag before the prices reflect the interest rate changes. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because we're currently in that lag. We're currently in that delay, that window of opportunity for you to get in and take advantage of not only the lower prices, but the lower rates, because a lower rate means lower monthly payments. Now, to the second point, if you've been paying attention to the condo market as of late, you probably noticed that condo units prices have been down significantly from the peak in 2022, 2023. And a big reason for that is because of a current oversupply of condo units. We've had a lot of finished projects in the last couple of years, including this year, which have driven prices down because there hasn't been enough demand to keep up with this new oversupply. Now, I say current oversupply because we're anticipating a future building shortage heading into 2027, 2028. I believe the statistic is in 2024, we had 44,000 finished projects. And in 2028, we're anticipating 24,000 finished projects. So yes, while prices are down now and there's a current oversupply, eventually this demand is going to creep up on the supply because we're not building enough. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it's important for you to take advantage not only of these prices now, but you alleviate the concern, the risk that many first-time buyers have of capital appreciation. A lot of people think that condo prices are going to continue going down, but I'm providing you information that no, the real estate market is always going to go up over time. And especially in the condo market, we're not building fast enough to keep up with the growing demand. So prices will go up in the short term heading into 2028. So you can guarantee yourself that if you're buying a home now, you see the value in it in just a couple of years. Okay, so now let's take a look at the buying process from a high level. I've broken it down to 5 simple steps. Step 1 is creating your wish list. Step 2 is building your team. Step 3 is going out for showings. Step 4 is placing an offer on your desired units. And step 5, you can't see right now, but step 5 is ideally getting that offer accepted. Now, before we get into the buyer process step by step, it's important for us to take a look at the factors that influence the price of your condo unit. First, we have location. So this can refer to the city that you're in, the neighborhood that you're in. Because how Toronto works, Toronto is a concentric city model. So the closer you are to that Toronto core, more value your condo unit will have. So a condo unit in North York is much more highly valued or sought after than a condo up in Barrie because it's closer to that Toronto circle. Next, we have unit size. So this refers to square footage and also number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. The more that you have or the higher square footage you have, the more value your home will be. Next, we have parking. Parking is very interesting in condos because it's considered a commodity. Unfortunately, these builders don't build enough parking spots to match the number of units inside the building. So you can see when you're looking at listings with a parking spot versus without a parking spot, you can see price differences of $30,000 up to $100,000, depending on the building and how much parking, how sought after that parking spot is in that area. Same thing goes for locker, but not really. A locker is additional storage space. It's more of a quality of life item because you can use it, and if not, you can rent it out. But generally, it's something that does add value to your unit. Now, parking a locker, even if you don't have it within your unit, do keep in mind that you can rent them out. You can rent a parking spot out, you can rent a locker out, either from another resident in the building or through property management directly. So that's something to keep in mind when you're taking a look at these condos, if you do need that second parking spot, for example. Next factor we have is amenities. So this includes your concierge and security, a swimming pool, a gym, a recreational room, a party meeting room, so on and so forth. These amenities are features that do add value to a building because it helps improve quality of life. While most of these amenities will be factored into your maintenance fee, some condos are well known for their amenities, so that can drive up prices of the units inside that building. Next, we have finishes and upgrades. Obviously, buildings with more modern finishes, more modern upgrades will be priced at a higher point. Same thing with the exposure and view. The higher you are up in a building, the better view you will have of the city around you. And also, if you're facing, let's say you're facing the water, a lovely harborfront view, that's going to be much more sought after than a unit that's facing another building, for example. All right, so step one in your buyer process is creating your wish list. So I've broken it down to 3 categories: your needs, your wants, and your deal breakers. So a need is something that you must have. A good example of this is a parking spot. If you drive, you definitely do need a parking spot. A want is something that you would like to have. So an example would be having a basketball court in your building, having an outdoor pool in your building, or even having a balcony inside your unit. So these are things that technically you can live without, but they're things that you definitely do want to have when considering your options in condo listings. Lastly, we have deal breakers. These are your complete turnoffs, things that will completely turn you away from the unit. The most common deal breakers I've seen with my clients is the areas. So not to call out certain areas, but I've had clients come up to me and say, I don't want to be in Moss Park. I don't want to be in Regent Park. Certain areas of the cities really turn people off. So that's an example of third deal breaker. Building your team. So your 3 most common professionals working with you in this real estate transaction is a realtor, mortgage broker, and a lawyer. Lucky for you, you already have your realtor. You're looking at him. Just joking. But depending on your situation, you may have other professionals to be joining your team, such as an inspector and a contractor if you plan on doing work in the unit afterwards. We at the Tyler McLay Realty Group, we do have a lot of referrals and a lot of professionals that we've worked with, and I personally worked with over the years. So if you do need a contact, for example, let's say you don't have a real estate lawyer, we do have our personal recommendations to help guide you through the process. Okay, so step 3, this is the fun part. This is when we actually go out for showings. And one of the most common questions I get as a realtor is how many showings does it normally take for you to finalize the deal? The answer is there's no set number of showings. I've done deals where we bought the first unit that we saw, and I've done deals where it took 6 months of showings for us to finally get to a deal. Generally, what I'd like to say is the more options you end up giving yourself, the harder it is to make a decision. So it is important for you to refer back to step 1, your wish list, to really set your priorities and what you want in a unit. And also consider your current situation. Is this going to be your final home, or is this going to be a stepping stone for when you eventually will upsize to a bigger home? This will help clear your mind and help make a more informed decision. Something else to keep in mind when you're going out for showings is researching the area of where you're going to be purchasing from. So look at any upcoming developments that are coming to that area. Look at the building and its reputation. Is that building Airbnb-able? And lastly, look at the property management. Do they have a good reputation? Do they communicate well? Or do they care about the residents? So on and so forth. Okay, so now we've seen a bunch of units and now we want to make an offer. So when making an offer, there are certain things that you need to know going into placing that offer. Number 1 is you need to know who's going on title. This is something you normally figure out when it comes to working with your mortgage broker. You want to know the price that you're going to be going in at. You need to know the closing date. Closing is typically between 30 and 90 days, but really depending on your situation or even the seller's situation, this can be flexible. Next, we have conditions and clauses. We're going to go into this more in depth later on, but essentially a condition allows you to back out of a deal. It's something that must be fulfilled in order for the deal to go through. The most common conditions you'll find is financing condition and inspection condition, and specifically for condo units, a status certificate condition. Status certificate is the document that summarizes the legal and financial health of a company. So you definitely want to know what's happening within the building before you actually purchase it. Clauses are different from conditions because they don't allow you to back out of the deal. It can be as simple as the seller agrees to clean the unit prior to closing. The seller agrees to provide all current appliances in working order prior to closing. Next, we have our deposit number. So the deposit is normally 5% of the purchase price that we're going in at. This is an amount that we submit with the offer 24 hours after we get the offer accepted. And this amount is held by the brokerage until closing. Now, the deposit is different from a down payment. We're going to go over that later on in this presentation. Lastly, we need to know our irrevocable date. So this is the expiry date of the offer. This is how much time we're giving to the sellers to accept, reject, or counter our offer. And step five, this is one of my favorite parts. This is where we start celebrating a bit, but we get our offer accepted. So when you get your offer accepted, you want to make sure you make your deposit within the 24 hours after you get it accepted. You want to fulfill all the conditions if you have any in the offer, and you want to prepare for any closing costs coming up, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. These are example of closing costs, and it's important to note that you should be budgeting for these costs because a lot of these costs you can't tack on to your mortgage. So it's important to have some cash ready available to pay and cover some of these costs. So first we have lawyer fees. This can run you anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000. Then we have our land transfer tax. We're going to go deeper into that in the following slide, but it's going to make a big chunk of your closing costs, especially if you're going to be purchasing within Toronto. Then we have our statement of adjustments. So your lawyer will give you a summary of any adjustments that the seller and buyers need to make prior to closing. And this essentially, for example, if you're going to be closing in the middle of the month, they're going to prorate amounts such as your maintenance fees, your property taxes, your hot water tank rental, and so on and so forth. And lastly, we have our moving costs. So this is the land transfer tax. It is the responsibility of the buyer and it is a provincial tax. So if you're going to be buying anywhere in the GTA, you will have to pay this land transfer tax. Now, if you're going to be purchasing within the city of Toronto, you're going to be paying not just the provincial portion, but a municipal portion. So think of it as a double land transfer tax. This is to be paid on closing and it can't be included with your mortgage. However, you do get a first-time buyer rebate or a refund for this land transfer tax, which we'll go into later on in this presentation, and double for Toronto. So don't worry, if you're going to be buying in Toronto, you will get a double refund later on as well. Some other costs you want to be aware of when you're going to be purchasing a condo unit are things like home insurance, maintenance fees. So the maintenance fees are paid monthly, property tax, utilities, and internet, unless you plan on living on data during your stay at your condo. Now, one of the most commonly asked questions is how you'll be paying from your home, since you'll be pulling money from different places. A big misunderstanding people will have is the difference between a deposit and a down payment. So just for simplicity, we're going to use an example. Let's say we're going to buy a $1 million home with a conventional mortgage, 20% down payment. So 24 hours after you get your offer accepted, you're going to be attaching your deposit, which is 5% of the purchase price. So in this case, $50,000 we're putting as our deposit. Now on closing date, is when we have to get that 20%, which includes the deposit. So on closing, we're going to have to submit $150,000 plus the $50,000 we already have from the deposit. That's going to make up the 20%, the $200,000 we need for closing. And then the remaining 80% is going to be taken care of by the mortgage. So I hope that breaks it down a little better, but essentially your deposit is included in your down payment. Okay, so this is an important slide because as of December 15th of last year, the rules for what the minimum down payment is and other first-time buyer rules have changed. So let's discuss that. So the absolute minimum down payment you need for a home is 5%, up to $500,000. If you're going to be purchasing a home over $500,000, so for the sake of an example, let's say you're buying a $600,000 condo, you will need to have 5% of $500,000 plus 10% of the remaining amount, so the remaining $100,000 from $500,000 to $600,000. So in total, you're gonna have $25,000 from the 5% plus the 10% from the remaining $100,000. That's gonna be a minimum down payment of $35,000 for a $600,000 condo. Now, the threshold up to 20% is $1.5 million. So if you're going to be purchasing a condo over $1.5 million, which is highly unlikely unless you're buying a really nice penthouse in Toronto, you will have to pay a minimum down payment of 20%. Now, first-time homebuyers can also extend their amortization period from 25 years to 30 years, which helps with the monthly mortgage payments because it helps spaces that out more. So a common thing I also hear from first-time buyers is that they don't have a 20% down payment ready. And that's why I've added this last point. If you do have family who has cash on hand, they can technically gift you that money with no penalties to help supplement your down payment. So do keep that in mind. That is an option for you. All right, so this just summarizes the previous slide. It just shows if you're to purchase at a certain price, what the minimum down payments would be. The most notable would be the bottom part, which again, I don't think you'll be purchasing a condo at $1.5 million. But if you're going to be purchasing it at 1.4999 versus 1.5, there's a significant difference with your minimum down payment. Okay, so this is the first time buyer dictionary. We've gone over a lot of these terms already, but I'll go over them quickly again for you. So the difference between a down payment and a deposit you submit with your offer, a down payment you need to have it ready for closing, and a deposit is included in your down payment. A clause versus a condition. So a condition allows you to back out of a deal. Most common conditions are a financing condition, an inspection condition, and for condos, a status certificate condition. A clause is something that doesn't let you back out of a deal, but it's something you still want to put in there for the sellers to acknowledge. Your irrevocable is your expiration for when that offer needs to be accepted, rejected, or countered. When a condo is sold firm, that means it's sold with no conditions. When it's sold conditional, that means there are conditions that must be met before it's officially sold firm. So that's the terminology for you to understand once we get into the offer process. A pre-approval is something you receive from your mortgage broker after they assess your financial documents and they pretty much tell you that they're able to financially lend you this money for the purchase of your home. It essentially acts as a guarantee for the seller that you can make this purchase, that you can receive the funding and financing in order to purchase this home. A home inspection, this is usually in a condition. It's conditional on you hiring a professional home inspector to go through the unit to make sure that everything is in good working order, everything is functional, there's no signs of water damage, no signs of mold. And this is important because you want to address these things before you actually accept the offer. So once everything is good, you can choose to waive the condition and the deal will go through. And lastly, a status certificate, we also briefly mentioned that. It's the legal and financial status of the building. So it's important for you to kind of have a lawyer go through these documents to make sure everything is in good standing. You want to make sure that the building is not in any debt, that they don't have any special assessments coming up because that would force you as the buyer taking over the unit to pay extra money out of your pocket. So again, important for your lawyers to go through here. At the end of the day, the more conditions you add to an offer, the less likely the seller is going to accept it, depending on the market that you're in. But if you do want to protect yourself, I do encourage you to include these conditions. But sometimes where we're getting into competitive pricing, you may have to waive certain conditions just to secure your chances at getting the unit. And finally, this is my personal favorite slide as a financial advisor because these are a lot of first-time home buyer benefits that you have access to, which can end up saving you tens of thousands of dollars off the purchase of your first home. So the first two have to do with the tax credit and refunds, and the last two have to do with utilizing tax deductions from your investment accounts. First, the home buyer tax credit, really simple. You can claim up to $10,000 for a rebate of $1,500. Next, we have the land transfer tax refund. So we mentioned earlier when we're paying our land transfer taxes, if you're purchasing anywhere in the GTA, you're able to receive a $4,000 tax refund. But if you're purchasing in Toronto, because you're paying both the provincial and municipal tax, you're actually eligible for a double refund. And then some, you'd be eligible for up to $8,475 as a tax refund. So next we have the home buyers plan, which utilizes your RRSP. And this is really cool because you get to withdraw up to $60,000 from your RSP tax-free towards the purchase of your first home. Now, you will have to repay this amount into your RSP over the span of 15 years. But this is really cool because when you contribute into your RSP, you do get tax deductions, which will save you a lot of money on your income tax. And lastly, we have our first home savings account or our FHSA. This is a newer account that was introduced in 2023 and it combines both the tax benefits of a TFSA and RSP. So when you put money into your FHSA, you do get tax deductions, which again will save you money on income tax. But also any money that grows in the FHSA is grown tax-free. So when you take it out towards the purchase of your first home, there's no tax penalties whatsoever. So you do get $8,000 of a contribution room every year, up to a maximum of $40,000. So you can essentially max out this account after 5 years of opening the account. Now, again, if you do have any questions about any of these first-time buyer benefits, do reach out personally. I am a financial advisor. I can help plan this out for you. I love numbers, so this slide really makes me happy. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, it's fairly simple once you break it down. And again, it will save you tens of thousands of dollars when purchasing your first home. And that's the presentation. So if you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out through my direct number, my email, or my social media. Be more than happy to help sit down with you and answer any more questions you may have about the buyer process. But until then, Vinny out.